At dinner, my billionaire husband's family publicly insulted me in front of their entire empire. His aunt sneered, "Why is the maid at our table?" I stayed silent, then quietly pulled the plug on a $690 million deal. Their empire was starting to crumble. Hey Reddit. My name is Elena Morgan, and until recently I was the silent, polished wife standing behind one of the richest men on the East Coast. People called me the lucky one, the maid-turned-mogul's wife, the rags to riches story no one could quite believe. But what they didn't know, what his family refused to acknowledge, was that I wasn't just a trophy on his arm. I had built more than half of what they took pride in showcasing. And one humiliating dinner changed everything. I met Alexander Morgan 5 years ago when I was working in operations at a boutique hotel he had invested in. I wasn't scrubbing floors like his aunt would later imply. I was the one running logistics, negotiating vendor contracts, and turning a barely surviving property into a profit machine in under 8 months. Alex noticed. He was smart, a little entitled, but genuinely impressed by my work. We fell in love not because of our backgrounds but in spite of them. When we got married, I was welcomed with careful smiles and stiff handshakes. His mother Vivian hated that I didn't come from old money. His aunt Claudia couldn't hide her disgust when she found out I'd once shared a studio apartment with 3 roommates. They thought I didn't belong. But Alex, he always defended me at first. Then came the merger, a $690 million hotel acquisition deal I had worked tirelessly on for almost a year. I negotiated with foreign investors, analyzed architectural blueprints, even visited disaster zones to assess rebuilding potential. The board was skeptical until I walked them through a 45-slide strategy deck that projected a 240% ROI over the next decade. I wasn't just Alex's wife. I was the key to the deal's success, but no one at the dinner table gave a damn. That night, everything cracked. We were seated in the grand dining room of the Morgan estate, the one with chandeliers so large you could live inside them and walls lined with oil portraits of ancestors who looked like they'd never worked a day in their lives. The entire family was there: Vivian, Claudia, his snobby cousins, a few board members, and even some influential foreign partners who had flown in for the week. I wore a soft ivory dress, simple but elegant, with pearl drop earrings that had belonged to my late mother. I smiled politely, made small talk, and quietly endured the underhanded jabs about how the color of my dress might be more suited to waitstaff. Then Claudia looked directly at me, narrowed her pale eyes, and raised her voice just enough so everyone heard. "Who let the maid sit at this table?" It was the kind of silence that punches you in the chest. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. I could feel the sting in my eyes, the fire in my chest. Every person there either chuckled nervously or looked away. Alex. He shifted uncomfortably, reached for his wine glass, and said nothing. Nothing. I sat in silence, swallowing the humiliation with my glass of water, not because I was weak but because I had a better plan. Claudia had no idea what she'd just cost them. I smiled politely, excused myself to the powder room, and sent a single text. "Freeze the merger until further notice. We need to revisit some aspects. Elena May." That one message was all it took. The next morning, while the Morgans were still basking in the afterglow of their little power trip, my legal team contacted the partners and board. Concerns had arisen. We needed time. Suddenly things weren't so stable anymore. And when the international investors realized I wasn't just some quiet arm candy but the woman who held the entire deal together, they panicked. They trusted me, not the Morgans. By the end of the week, 2 of the key investors had pulled out. The board demanded a reevaluation. The media caught wind that there was unrest in the famed Morgan Empire's most ambitious deal. Their stock dipped 11% in 3 days. Claudia sent me a fruit basket. I sent it back. Alex confronted me the following weekend. His voice was calm but his jaw was tight. "What are you doing, Elena? This merger is important. You're acting irrational." "Irrational? You watched your aunt call me a maid in front of the board and foreign partners and you said nothing." "I wasn't trying to embarrass you," he said. "You didn't need to," I said. "Your silence did it for you." He tried to apologize, tried to spin it as family being traditional or out of touch, but that wasn't the point. This wasn't about one insult. It was about years of brushing off their snide comments, letting them belittle me at galas, dinners, and family meetings while he stood by, afraid to ruffle the feathers of the hand that fed him. So I ruffled it for him. Over the next few weeks I met privately with the key stakeholders. I explained my reasons. Some nodded in agreement. Some tried to sway me. But the message was clear. If I wasn't going to be treated as an equal, I wasn't going to contribute to an empire that stood on a cracked foundation of elitism and arrogance. I still loved Alex, but something in me had shifted. I had built so much, sacrificed so much. I didn't climb out of poverty just to be looked down upon by people who'd never earned their own fortunes. I wasn't going to apologize for being the smartest woman in the room. At a private board meeting, I announced that the deal was officially terminated. No press release, no explanation, just done. Millions lost in projections. Years of planning halted. Vivian looked like she wanted to throw her pearls across the room. Claudia called me a liability. And Alex, well, Alex didn't speak to me on the way home. That night I sat alone in our penthouse living room sipping tea, staring out at the skyline I used to dream about from my tiny apartment window. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. I wasn't just the maid they thought they could mock. I was the woman who quietly held their empire together. And now I was the woman who could tear it all down. The morning after I pulled the plug on the $690 million merger, the Morgan family descended into chaos. News of the collapse spread faster than they could contain it. The media speculated everything from internal corruption to a hostile takeover. Headlines screamed about instability in the Morgan legacy, and shareholders panicked. But the truth sat quietly in my hands, and no one but me knew it yet. Alex tried to reach out several times in the following days. His messages started politely. "We need to talk. I miss you. Let's work through this." Then they turned sharp. "You've humiliated my family. You've made this personal. This wasn't your decision alone." But it was. That was the part he never understood. I had warned him long ago that marrying me meant standing beside me, not in front of me. I wasn't his accessory. I wasn't there to smile pretty while the rest of them played billionaire games. I had built, brokered, and balanced more than he or his silver spoon cousins ever could. And yet they all dismissed me as though I'd arrived in a uniform with a feather duster. I moved out quietly. No drama. No theatrics. Just a note on the kitchen counter. "I'm not your decoration, Alex, and I won't be your family's doormat." I stayed in a suite at a boutique hotel I had helped finance 3 years ago. The staff welcomed me like a queen, and for the first time in weeks I breathed. Not as Mrs. Morgan, just as Elena. It was freeing and terrifying. One evening, about 2 weeks after everything unraveled, I got a visit from someone unexpected. Darius Leung, one of the key international investors who had originally backed the merger. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "You saved me a fortune. I trusted your instincts then, and I trust them now. What's your next move?" And just like that, the gears turned. I'd spent too long building someone else's empire. Maybe it was time to build my own. I reached out to 3 former partners, 2 women and 1 man I trusted completely. And over the next 6 weeks we quietly assembled a new syndicate, a leaner, smarter, more agile investment group focused on luxury hospitality innovations across Asia, Europe, and South America. I didn't just walk away from the Morgans. I stepped into something 10 times stronger. The Morgans, on the other hand, not so lucky. Without my direction, the failed merger left a financial hole they weren't equipped to patch. Several partners threatened lawsuits. A few high-profile resignations followed. Rumors of infighting leaked to the press. Vivian attempted to salvage the image by funding a charity gala, but no one bought the pearls and Poe show anymore. Claudia, from what I heard, tried to pin the collapse entirely on me. But when leaked emails revealed her disdain for my involvement and her infamous Maid comment, even the board turned cold. Eventually Alex reached out again. This time it wasn't anger. It was desperation. "Can we meet just once? No pressure. I miss us." I agreed. Not for reconciliation, but for closure. We met at the rooftop of the Morgan Plaza, the first hotel I'd helped turn around. He looked tired, not the perfectly styled, confident heir I'd married, but a man unraveling at the seams. "You really did all this," he said, gesturing toward the skyline. "The empire's shaking." "I didn't want to hurt you," I replied calmly. "But I won't let anyone humiliate me again, not even your family." He nodded, swallowing his pride. "I should have defended you that night." "Yes, you should have." There was a long pause. Then softly he asked, "Is there any way back?" I looked him in the eye. "For us? No. But for you, maybe. If you learn to stand without needing to stand on someone else." And then I left. I didn't cry. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. The Morgan name no longer held weight in my world. I wasn't Elena Morgan anymore. I was Elena Graves, a name from my mother's side, the side that taught me to fight quietly and fiercely. I legally changed it as the final step in closing the chapter. 6 months later, my new venture Graves and Holt launched its first luxury eco-hospitality hub in Patagonia. Investors lined up before the doors opened. Forbes named me one of the top rising moguls in the industry. But the best part, one did it without needing anyone's name to prop me up. I was no longer in the background of someone else's legacy. I had become the empire. As for the Morgans, their brand still exists, but its shine is tarnished. They know now that arrogance can cost more than money. It can cost you the one person holding everything together. I still get invitations from them. Alex sends holiday cards. Claudia even tried to reach out after the Patagonia launch, offering to discuss a potential reconciliation between our ventures. I didn't respond. Some empires crumble. Others rise from the ashes. And I built mine from the dust they thought I belonged to. Some stories end with silence. Mine ended with power. I didn't need their approval. I only needed to remember who I was before they tried to erase me. And now they'll never forget it.